So as I was saying on the last video, the Egyptians inherited writing. And to continue this idea, the Egyptians believed that the writing was a sacred trust to be given to the king as high priest and scribe to keep him and the people ever in touch with the mind and the will of heaven. Now, interesting, the scholar Geo Widengren wrote a book about this exact subject, the Apostle and the Heavenly Book. See, this is the whole idea here. He says this: so the knowledge is communicated to the king, and this knowledge is of a mysterious character, bearing upon the great mysteries of heaven and earth, bearing upon the hidden things, and is a revelation of the hidden knowledge by the gods. Can we style it primordial revelation? So there is a primordial revelation. Now we have the idea, the purpose of writing, don't we? Isn't that interesting how that connects? Because we have to hand down this primordial revelation. In other words, just like Joseph Smith, the prophet, taught, there is a book of Adam. And according to the, well, I believe it's in the book of Jubilees, several of the pseudepigraphical and the apocryphal writings, this sacred book was handed down from father to son, from father to son. You have the books of Enoch, the book of Adam, the book of Noah. And now we've discovered a lot of this information because of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this really builds here. The oldest writing is used for business transactions, incidentally, but it's always in the temple. and here's another real interesting connection here. It's in the temple. Only in temple accounts. They call it the Gebrauchschrift, that is the business writing, and the Kultschrift, that is the holy writing. So the temple is where you find it. It all begins in the temple. And Nibley wrote on this theme in the Temple and Cosmos enormously, the meaning of the temple and how all of the great aspects of civilization occurred first in the temple, and then it was like the hierocentric point, then everything spread out from there. It's a fascinating concept. And the temple plays a very large role in the Book of Mormon. One of the first things Nephi does when he gets here in the New World, builds a temple after the manner of King Solomon. So this is a big deal. And of course the Nephites gather at the temple gatherings for their very important sermons, you know, King Benjamin's speech and so on and so forth. And then of course Christ appears at the temple. As Kurt Satha says, hieroglyphic is correctly named because it's only on the walls of the temple itself, see, that it's survival from prehistoric times. So wherever you find it from first to last, ancient writing remains in the hands not of businessmen, but of the priests in the temple. That's interesting. It's a holy and a secret thing imparted only to the elect, and it is zealously withheld from all others. Yes. Only the prophets may read and understand the holy books is the rule. So each system of writing here that we have now, with the various systems of writing, this is an effective seal on the holy books themselves. This is a cryptogram in a secret formula which the profane do not know. It's hermetic. See the hermetic sealed jar. This is the idea. It's kept from the outside. It's only kept within. This is the theme. The idea of a holy book that is taken away from the earth and restored from time to time. This is the whole point of the Book of Mormon theme, isn't it? It's handed down secretly from father to son for generations, or it's hidden up in the earth. See, some of the famous books of Enoch were hidden in the earth. The Book of Noah was hidden in the earth and then dug up after the flood to be reissued among the children of man. I mean, it's a big theme in the Book of Jubilees. So it's preserved by ingenious methods of storage. It's usually written on precious, imperishable materials, metal plates, another Book of Mormon theme. See, now this thing starts reverberating all over the place. Now it begins to make sense, somewhat, from an ancient point of view. Who in the 19th century heard of anything so ludicrous as writing on metal? Good heavens, can't you see that's a difficult proposition? Have you ever tried to write on metal? I have. It would have sucked. And they did complain about that in the Book of Mormon. They complained about the difficulty, you betcha. The same difficulty was noted by John Allegro on the famous copper scroll of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now this is one of the things that Nibley did that I personally have come to appreciate and love even more. I've read his writings time and again. What he does, and here's why, what he does is he'll drop hints. Nibley drops a very, very interesting hint about the Book of Mormon here, but he didn't develop it a lot. He actually developed it more in his book, The Message of the Joseph Smith Papyri, than he did in the Book of Mormon. It's a Kabbalistic theme, and he's hinting at it. Now, I suspect he knew more than he let on, because in my explorations of the Book of Mormon, the Kabbalah gives it yet again a deeper definition, a more solid spiritual meaning. For real. And he says, now, the letter by itself, just the letter, a letter A, a letter B, a letter F, whatever, it takes a process like the flight of a bee, a miraculous process that can't be explained. But you'll notice how you put the thing together. A letter by itself is meaningless. It has to go into a word. Of course, it's symbolic. The whole Kabbalah is based around that. There's a whole gematria. That is, each letter has a numerical represented value. And that opens up dimensions of meaning for the Jewish rabbis as they count the letters in the Hebrew text of the Old Testament. There is a whole technique, a whole science based on the significance of a single letter. See, this is the theme of the Kabbalistic book, the Sefer Yetzirah. God created the universe using the Hebrew letters. Well, anyway, these only form words. They not only form words, but in any combination, what they mean. That the letters have to be put together to make words. The words have to be put together to make phrases or single-word sentences. There is such a thing as a single-word sentence. A.H. Gardner, the great Egyptologist and author of The Big Grammar, wrote a book on the nature of the sentence. He gives the example, rain, as a sentence. Here's where your luck comes in. The single word is rain, and that's a sentence. It tells a whole story. But it depends on how it is said or how you react to it. If I say rain, that means it's raining again. Are we actually having rain? If I say disgustedly, rain, that means that it is raining again. All it is rain and an exclamation point, however. It depends on the context in which it is found. You have to supply that. If I say, rain, can it possibly be raining again? If I say, rain, at last we're having rain. So it goes. There's dozens of ways in which the one word will make a sentence. But it doesn't make sense until you have put it into a sentence and the sentence you want it to mean. You see what you can get away with when you are interpreting the scriptures, if you do it that way. If you say a thing like, alas, it means a certain situation is implied here, and you get into the situation. But the word by itself has to be in a phrase. And the phrase has to be in a sentence. Any self-contained message is a book. The sentence is part of the message. The message is a book, no matter how short it is. It can just be 3 sentences. With the ancients, length has nothing to do with it. But books were meant to be put in libraries. It's a funny thing that writing began with libraries. It didn't begin with single letters, which are put together to make a word, which are put together to make a sentence, and which are put together, and it began with a library. It's the Hermetic concept of the hologram that contains all knowledge. You begin with the perfect pattern, and from there it degenerates downhill. So anyway, that's Nibley's Kabbalistic hint, and it's a hint I will explore in detail in my commentary. So I'm building my way up to Nephi chapter 1. I'm just about there. I'm ready to begin. Now that I've kind of laid out just a little bit of groundwork for you, let's begin with the very first chapter and the very first verse. I'm going to have a lot to say about that first verse.